We are live. Hold on, I got to get Discord up. There we go. Welcome back to Unverified. Kind of a meta joke here. Not really a joke, but we complain about 2-week breaks. Actually, 3-week breaks. We didn't take quite a 3-week break, but we took a 2-week break. But now we're back, and we've got a metric butt ton of stuff to talk about. Hello, Tony. Hello, Kyle. How we doing this evening?
Things are good. As you can see, we're in between studios as the studio that we are in is moving locations, not quite ready for setup. And, maybe we'll take this show on the road out to Indianapolis Motor Speedway over the next couple of weeks. But we wanted to make sure we got a show out for everybody. That's why I have this trucker headset like I'm driving an 18-wheeler through the desert. But here for you guys, there's a lot to discuss, as David mentioned, and looking forward to it. I know Kyle's got a big weekend ahead. Down in South Beach, so excited to be here on a Tuesday night, per usual, on Unverified.
That's a video game headset, Tony. That's not a trucker headset.
Yeah, I was going to say he looks like mom needs to go more Mountain Dew so we can play some more Halo.
I look like an offensive coordinator at a local high school.
No. The generational gap sometimes, Tony, I don't understand. You're only 5 years older than me, and you complain about me being stuck in the past all the time, and granted, listen, my comfort food is the 95 500, but you can't be
chicken nuggets.
And chicken nuggets. You can't listen. I love them Dino Nuggets. You put those Dino Nuggets in front of me with the 95 500. I'm gonna be happy. But you really
pancakes from Denny's.
I do love the Denny's pancakes. That's yeah, second only to French toast. But all right, we've missed a lot of stuff today or over the past 2 weeks. I don't know where we should start. Should we start with Long Beach? I guess we didn't talk about Long Beach enough in the last episode, so I guess very briefly, Tony, I guess we'll lead off with you. What are your thoughts on Long Beach? And obviously, one of the big things everybody was talking about was the TV rating. I don't know how much you want to focus on that versus the race, but I mean, obviously, a lot of discussion going on in the IndyCar sphere.
Well, I think I'll take responsibility for not talking about Long Beach as much in the last episode, but it kind of played out exactly like we thought it was going to, outside of the fact that Kyle Kirkwood won and not Alex Palou. It was another race dominated by one car, one driver. It was another race that did not see any yellow flags, which is absolutely insane. It was cool to see Kyle Kirkwood win, obviously his second Long Beach Grand Prix win of his career and third overall win of his career, all coming on street courses. And again, an absolute dud on the TV rating because of the fact that you went up against the Masters. Since then, it's kind of like since the test, right? We've kind of washed our hands of it, I think. But we've seen one pass for the lead in the hybrid era here for IndyCar, which I think is pretty concerning. And we go to the test the last couple of days last week at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and we start thinking about IMS and the 500, but we have 2 more races before the 500. I thought Long Beach was okay. There was some compelling things going on, I think, inside of the top 10, and I think IndyCar fans, rest assured, were just relieved that we didn't see Alex Palou start the season winning all 3 races.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a point in time where I thought that was going to happen. I mean, you look at Kyle Kirkwood, and I really was so impressed with his drive. He had to put together a perfect race to beat Alex Palou, and he did that. The reason, and I know Kyle's about to probably call me out on this, I said on this show there was no way in hell Kyle Kirkwood was going to win that race, and that was because I didn't have faith in the pit crew. I knew that this was going to be a race that was most likely going to be, if not entirely green, mostly green, because that's been the trend in the hybrid era on the road and street courses in IndyCar. And I didn't trust the Andretti pit crew. Now, it looks like they're starting to get that turned around, but that's been a weakness of their game in recent years. But again, Brian Herta was perfect on the pit box. The pit crew was perfect in the pit box, and Kyle Kirkwood was perfect on the racetrack. So made a lot of sense. And obviously there were some great stories, as you mentioned, throughout that top 10. Stingray, Robb, Dev, Kiff and Simpson. Really, really interesting top 10 there. I mean, the fact that towards the end of the race, you saw Stingray Robb chasing down Scott Dixon for position, and had there been 1 or 2 more laps of that race, I don't know what might have happened, but there were some really cool things about Long Beach. I mean, yes, Tony, to your point, the race wasn't as exciting. I said this to someone else. I really wish we had the thermal finish at Long Beach. I think that would have really made the fan base happy. Um, but yeah, I think it's absolutely unbelievable that since turn 3, lap 1 of St. Pete, the entirety of the season has gone caution free. And I wouldn't be surprised if Barber goes caution free. So we might get to the Indy GP and be essentially caution free for 4 races leading into 5. That's just insane. And for the TV rating, I mean, certainly shocking, disappointing, all those words that I couldn't find when I reacted to it on Twitter at the beginning. But go ahead, Kyle. Roast me for doubting Kyle Kirkwood.
Yeah, I wish I had the clip ready because I mean I just had that feeling the guy's a street course merchant, as they've been saying, and I was pretty confident in that pick. And honestly, his worst finish this season is inside the top 10, and he's 34 points behind Palou. So he is quite literally second in points, but he's the first guy in line to dethrone Palou. To have Palou, almost sweep all 3 races and have a guy still 34 points behind him is pretty impressive. So, I mean, we can talk about this later when you start talking about Barber, but I think Kirkwood is a legit championship contender. And obviously there's 2 races before the 500, but he's up there on the board in the 500 discussion as well.
Isn't
I
that
thought
crazy?
Longard had a good weekend too, real quick, just because of the fact that he crashed in qualifying, was a little bit banged up. They got the car fixed overnight. He ends up landing on the podium. David, I know that you're not ready to put him in the championship contender category yet till you see him on some ovals, which is totally fair. But I thought, we talked about Kiffin and Stingray Robb having good runs. I also felt that it was a good weekend overall for Christian Longard. And as Kyle mentioned, who's going to dethrone Palou, if anybody, but who's really going to give him a run for his money? So far, it's been Kyle Kirkwood, and I'm interested to see Penske, who has had a roller coaster start to this season, as we know. Joseph Newgarden finishing last in a race this year. Can they bounce back at Barber, a race that they've been historically good at? Scott McLaughlin's going for his 3rd straight win down in Barber. But I'm interested to see this weekend what Penske can do to kind of bounce back and I guess get their footing to start this 2025 season.
Well, and I think if the open test proved anything, I think it's that Team Penske is very much going to be going to be a factor at the Indianapolis 500 as well. So I think any thoughts of Team Penske demise are, I think, a bit premature at this point. I think they're about to start charging. You think about Will Power's championship fight last year, although it didn't ultimately result in a championship. I think you all saw, some Team Penske drivers last year lost an entire race due to a penalty. And yet, had Scott McLaughlin especially not lost that race, he would have been a championship winner last year. So there's still a lot of points on the board when we're talking about championship. It's too early outside of Alex Palou to say anybody is really out of having a shot at the championship. But Tony, you've been tweeting a lot. And I think this is perfect because I think it's a good time to talk some
I'm going to count up
sources.
the tweets that I've tweeted compared to what you do because, you call me out for tweeting all the time, but I don't think you're too far behind.
Well, I listen, I'm a yapper. There's no doubt about it. I wouldn't be in the job that I'm in if I wasn't a yapper, but I don't know. I think, I'm going to give you a compliment, Tony. Your Twitter might be a little more substantive than mine is because sometimes you put some information out there.
Definitely spicier.
That's true.
Well, the latest in the Dudes Bro Sources category is a couple of things. I will start with this. And we kind of knew coming into this year that Kyle Larson was obviously going to run the 500. It was a 2-year deal from last year to this year. And now he was asked in the presser on Wednesday, now this is before he crashed, this is after day 1, about would you like to run this race again? And he had mentioned maybe one day later on down the line in his career, because obviously this is a 2-year deal. Now there may be some changes in the team that he is on. There may be some changes throughout the paddock that maybe might conflict with him coming back in, let's say, 2026. So me personally, I'm looking at this being Larson's final shot for probably a long time. Now, maybe that changes if, he could find maybe another team. Maybe it is McLaren. That seems to me like it'd be doubtful. But, there's also a chance that we could see him, this be his final 500 coming up for a long time. And then there's been questions on, we always talk about this, and the three of us have talked about this many times as well, of like who's on the roster of drivers this year that aren't going to be back next year. There always seems to be 2 or 3 drivers where it's like, yeah, I can see them not back, or their contract's up, or they're probably going to get released, those type of things. Marco Andretti, I know was okay at the test. I don't really have the highest of expectations of him for the month of May, but everything I've been hearing, gathered from a few sources, is that next year in 2026 was obviously be the 20-year anniversary since his rookie season where he lost on that last lap to Sam Hornish Jr., that Marco Andretti would be back coming up for his final 500 run in 2026. The other Dude Bro source that I had learned throughout testing and throughout this past weekend, and I think it's kind of been a mystery of who all is going to fill out that Fox broadcast when it comes to the month of May, and will it be similar to NBC? You remember NBC had Mike Tirico and had other, Jimmy Johnson was a part of the broadcast, having former drivers, maybe even team owners, such kind of weighing in throughout the broadcast. And in this, honestly, on my Twitter was not met with the greatest of response, the most positive of responses, so to speak. But everything that I've heard is that Danica Patrick will be a part of the IndyCar on Fox broadcast for not only the Indianapolis 500 but qualifying weekend as well. And it was interesting because I put that out last evening, and it kind of blew up a little bit, and the reaction, I wouldn't say it was split. I think it was probably 80% negative, 20% positive. And regardless of what you think about Danica Patrick, she's going to move the needle. People are going to tune in to listen to her, I think, like a cult following almost, maybe. But IndyCar on Fox decided that I was going to be one of the 123 people that they follow on X now. And so I don't know who else is going to run on the broadcast. I think you'll have other aspects. You'll have a host. You'll have some other people, I think, added to it. But the latest that I have been told, mark it down on your Dude Bro sources, is that Danica Patrick will be a part of the 2025 Indianapolis 500 broadcast for Fox.
Okay, I have a few things to add, and then I want to talk about Danica. On the subject of McLaren, I had a conversation that I thought was very interesting with someone that I would trust, and the implication of the conversation was that Kyle Larson would not be returning for next year, at least with McLaren. And I'm very curious because my impression from that conversation is that McLaren very much intends to have a 4th car at next year's Indianapolis 500 with a star driver in the seat. So that search has already begun for McLaren. Again, I completely agree with you, Tony, and kind of hear what Kyle is saying to us, the media. Sure sounds like that deal ends, at least with McLaren, this year. So I think, you and I are going to have to start hitting the ground running and trying to figure out who is going to be in that 4th car next year. I think there's some compelling options. Obviously, McLaren not only has their ability to go into the catalog of NASCAR drivers. I think there's maybe some drivers that you would want to see in a car at McLaren. I think to Kyle Busch, although he might be a little too old now. Christopher Bell. Actually, if you go around the dirt world, you kind of hear some rumors from time to time that Christopher Bell wanted to be an IndyCar driver growing up. He didn't necessarily want to be a NASCAR driver, but that's where his path took him. So could you compel a Christopher Bell? I don't know. And of course, you look at McLaren and you look at where they stand in the motorsports world globally. It's kind of hard to think that you wouldn't maybe find a driver who is Formula One associated to potentially get in that seat. Now, what we know about the Formula One calendar for next year is that Monaco and Indianapolis will not clash next year. Now, the question mark is, will Canada move up into that spot, or will that Indy 500 weekend remain open? If that Indy 500 weekend is open, I'm just saying, why not another Fernando Alonso crossover event where a Lando Norris or an Oscar Piastri gives it a shot? I mean, you want to talk about a blockbuster, you want to talk about marketing, you want to talk about getting people talking, that's the way to do it, and that's what McLaren likes to do. And to your point, Tony, again, there's some things brewing behind the scenes that would make it a little bit more difficult for a Kyle Larson to drive a McLaren next year. That's as far as I want to say anything about that right now. But yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting possibilities out there for McLaren in their fourth car next year. On the subject of Danica Patrick, why? And I get why, because yes, Danica Patrick is a very historically significant driver to the Indian. No matter how you feel about her, and I have lots of thoughts, but Danica Patrick is one of the most historically significant Indy car drivers ever. She's the first female driver who really genuinely had a shot of winning the Indianapolis 500. So you can't really deny that. You can't really deny the historical significance of who she is, what she represents to this race. That being said, whenever Danica comes on an IndyCar broadcast, I get the sense that she has not watched an IndyCar race in 365 days. Mm-hmm. And for me, as someone who, and I'm sure for you, Tony, you, Kyle, for someone who pounds the pavement 365 days, covering this sport, immersing myself in it, talking to the people, learning the storylines, knowing the players, knowing the game. It's a little bit frustrating that someone like Danica, and yes, Danica has the star power, which you're never going to be able to replace. But someone like Danica is thrust into a role where she has to educate the public on IndyCar racing, the cars and the stars and what this is all about, when she's given me every impression that she's checked out from the sport. And I get it, she gets a payday, but I don't know. Am I way off base here?
No, I think you're right. I wish that she would maybe do a little bit more homework, but when I watch the broadcast, I think she does an okay job in the driver analyst role, especially when they don't have her in the booth. They just have her on a pit box. The big thing for me about Danica is, it's the star power. I don't know how much she actually moves the needle of people going, I'm going to tune in because Danica is going to be on the booth, but more so, to a casual fan, you're going to see Danica and you're going to recognize the name, and you're going to actually, like, you're probably going to associate her with IndyCar. As spoiler alert, one of our history segments might have to do with the fact that the 05 500, this is an anniversary year for that race, and so it was a big deal, and people probably associate her more so with IndyCar, especially the casual fans, and the casual fans aren't really going to tell the difference on if Danica's in tune. What really comes into play, I think, the issue with Danica is then you have to have somebody alongside Danica to educate the people, to educate that casual fan, because I think Danica could do a fine job in that role.
Well, it seems like to me at times IndyCar, they look at people's following and social media wise. We know that they've gone with influencers in the past to try to promote this race. And Danica is somebody who's been in the cockpit and has a very strong following. I think when it comes to motorsports and what she does in her personal life, whether she gained all those driving a race car or dating Aaron Rodgers, whatever it was. Like I said, not a lot of people on my Twitter timeline were fans of this. But at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with having a female in there, a female that's driven a race car. And you would hope, and I'm not saying this will happen, but you would hope that she would, hit the ground running and get there on Friday, a fast Friday, and start talking to people and using her contacts to find out information. Back to your point real quick, David, on possibilities of why Larson can't or may not come back next year. Just go through and read our chat here on YouTube. That should get you up to speed on what that's looking like. Kyle, you're going to have to let us know what your cat's name is. Came in and out there in the back. And,
I did. Yeah. I told the chat to say hello to Boris.
Boris. Okay, we saw Boris in the back.
The legend, yeah. Boris. We love Boris.
My roommate's
the legend Boris. But look, I mean, I think Fox is going to do a good job with the broadcast this year. We talked a few weeks ago on whether or not the president of the United States is going to be there or not. That's an added element that we'll talk about in May when it gets closer. And there's a lot of political ties to that we're not going to get into here right now. But like I said, if she can get in there and David, it was a great point, like you said, not make it seem like or sound like that she hasn't watched a race since last year's 500. I think it'll be a good aspect. So let's dive into Barber, boys. Coming up this weekend, we head back down to Birmingham. I know Kyle, you'll be in Miami. I think the storyline is, we'll get an Indy next race because they took a whole semester off. But Scotty McLaughlin going for 3 in a row at this track. Can Penske kind of get the season turned around? This is one of those fun street courses. This is
road course.
Or excuse me, one of those fun road courses. The elevation changes, the weirdness of it. We've all been there. What are our expectations coming up on Sunday afternoon for Barber as we turn the calendar to May? But hey, let's run down to the redheaded stepchild and run Barber, which I like Barber, but that's kind of what it seems like in the feel of it when you run that thing in May.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think ideal situation, and I'm going to say this again because the explanation I always get with the Indy test and Barber is that, well, what happens if the tires we need to change the tire? You're not going to change the tires in 2 weeks. Like, I think we should have run Barber last week and we should be testing at the Speedway this week. But again, I don't make those decisions.
Could you imagine what the crowd would have been like if Saturday? I mean, yeah, I know you've got Rev and you've got the mini marathon, but could you imagine if they ran a test like Sunday, Monday, or Saturday, Sunday? I think would have been ideal. Maybe hell, can't you run that marathon and then get everybody off the track as they head back downtown and throw the green at 1:00 and have 1 to 6 and then have all day Sunday? I think that would have been huge. I think that would have brought in a lot more people. But again, I think the fans that went out there last week and the fans that would have went out if it was this weekend are the hardcore, diehard fans that are just dying to pack their cooler and get back out to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Well, Tony, you and I know because we were both there is that boy oh boy was Pagoda Plaza pretty empty. If they wanted to have a party, you could have a party and test at the same time. That's my opinion. Back to Barber. Great track, really, really great track. It's kind of funny. You think back to like the late 2000s, early 2010s when they started testing at Barber, and really it was just supposed to be a test track. They were not really looking at that as a race until, much like we're talking about with testing crowds, huge crowds would show up to watch Indy cars go around on a test day. So Barber really earned its spot on the calendar. But I remember guys like Robin Miller for a long time before Barber actually established itself as a race would say, this is a cool track and the fans show up, but it really needs a passing zone. They need to do something to the track. They haven't needed to do anything to the track. More often than not, Barber is one of the more competitive, entertaining races the whole year. And I don't know what's so magical about it. Certainly natural terrain road courses are always going to, kind of lend themselves to exciting open wheel racing, especially a track like Barber where there is no room for error. Mistakes do punish you, and you have to be precise. And I think it's I'm looking forward to this race. I think we all kind of are crossing our fingers that the extra weight isn't a massive deterrent at a track like Barber. You worry a little bit because it is tight and twisty. Yes, we've seen some incredible racing over the past decade at Barber, really. I mean, I go back to the Aero Kit era, and I think of the Joseph Newgarden win with Graham Rahal chasing him down. I mean, that was super exciting. The next year with Graham and Simon, I remember Ryan Hunter-Ray having a really exciting race there one time with, I think, Will Power and a few others. So it's not like this racetrack. I mean, Grosjean and McLaughlin a couple of years ago. There's some really exciting racing that can happen here. But with the tight nature of the track, the undulation, the long sweeping corners, dirty air becomes a talking point always. And with the extra weight of the hybrid, this seems like a recipe for a parade. I hope that's not what it is, but I'm a little bit worried that's what it's going to be. So
Can anybody knock off Alex Palou or Scott McLaughlin this weekend?
Yeah.
Who?
I mean, Alex Pato Award won here 2022, and you have to remember the run that Christian Lundgaard's been on. I mean, I can't call what the strengths of Andretti are going to be, but I've already said that I think Kyle Kirkwood is a championship contender. So, I mean, you really have to wait until what we see on Friday. But as of right now, with no cars on the track, yeah, I think Alex Palou is the favorite. McLaughlin, based on the seasons Penske has had. Yeah, he's won 2 in a row here, but that's pre-hybrid era, and that's Penske's. They still haven't gotten their footing yet this season, so I don't really. I I think Alex Palou is the clear favorite, but yeah, I mean Lundgaard for sure.
I think
That's a
Lundgaard will
solid
be in
choice.
contention this weekend. I'm looking at Colton Herta. Can you build momentum heading into the Indianapolis 500? You've obviously won the Indianapolis GP. You had a good 500 going last year until you biffed it coming off one. It's kind of been, I would say, a little bit of an up and down start to the season. He's been pretty consistent, but he's been pretty consistent in that 3rd to 6th type of range. So can you take that step forward and compete for a podium and ultimately compete for a win this weekend? So my eyes are on Colton Herta to give both Palou and McLaughlin a run for their money coming up on Sunday.
I really like that Christian Lundgaard pick. I mean, it almost feels like.
But he's not a championship contender.
Well, he's got. You got to go. You got to be able to show up in Milwaukee and look good. Yeah.
Okay. You got to finish top 12 on the ovals. I mean, Palou's never won an oval race, and he's a 3-time champion.
Yeah, but he's been like ridiculously dominant. We haven't seen the ridiculous dominance from Christian Lundgaard either. Now, I think, and also, we gotta remember where McLaren is. McLaren's not Ganassi. McLaren's not Penske. Not yet, anyway. They're close, but they're not that kind of team that can just rip off 3 or 4 wins in a row. So
they do have too many off weekends. They have too many weekends where they're just nowhere.
Correct. So
tough to have an off weekend when you already have 3.5 weeks between races. Just kind of adds to it, right? Just kind of extends that streak, does it not?
Well, the thing about Barber is like now we're getting into that point where like this weekend starts and then we're straight until Detroit, and then after Detroit it's I think 1 or 2 weeks. No, there's Gateway. There's 1 week off and then Gateway and then Road America right after that, and then I think an off week in the middle. So we're going after this. So this is like Barber is the start of, hey, you better be on top of everything. You better be performing at your best.
Yeah, this is kind of like the whiplash of the schedule. And again, you'll hear about this more tomorrow. That's all I can say, but there's nothing we can do about that right now. As a series, that's going to be an off-season discussion, but the fact that we've had such a slow start to the IndyCar Championship, and now we're going to go into a hellacious, like 2-month block of essentially nonstop racing. It's going to be good from the perspective of the storylines are going to be essentially nonstop, but this is going to be tough on the teams. This is going to be tough on everybody working in the sport week to week.
It's gonna be awesome.
It's gonna be well. There you go. Look at Kyle. He just firing off. Kyle is gonna be the most hated person in the paddock by the time we get to Mid Ohio, but it'll be all right.
It's gonna be awesome.
Well, and I mean, it's full on really from here through the end of the season. If you think about it, maybe a couple weeks off, as we mentioned here and there. So it's like we hurried up and waited since St. Pete, and it was touch and go, off and on, and all of a sudden. It's full go, and really full go, guys, really started with the IMS test, or as David Land refers to it, practice days 1 and 2 for the Indianapolis 500. We were out there, got to talk to several drivers, got to see new liveries. We also saw Kyle Larson and Takuma Sato crash back to back. I'll tell you my Kyle Larson story with that here coming up, but David, what were the top takeaways that you had from the 2 test days where we had awesome weather, but that we saw last Wednesday and Thursday from IMS?
So first of all, I need to kind of understated it. The technology fail was pretty unacceptable right off the bat, where we had a 2-hour 45-minute break. That was on me. I don't know why I understated it in the video. I get excited at IMS. I can't lie. So when I see cars on the oval, I kind of forget all the bad things, unfortunately. So that was tough. There's no doubt about it. But once we got going, to your point, it was 2 full days of really intense practice. The fact that we saw the high boost for the qualifying setups, I thought was really interesting. And again, kind of goes back to the idea of, hey, this is kind of first and second day of practice for the Indianapolis 500. At least in my opinion right now. And I could be wrong, because the thing that, a lot of us in the industry heard going into the season was that Chevy had Honda's number and they were going to wax them. And as it turns out, Honda's won the first 3 races. So I'm going to be kind of careful in what I say here, but I think Chevy was sandbagging. I think especially Team Penske didn't show everything that they had. But I think, especially in terms of the qualifying boost, I think what was very interesting to me was that I guess we'll have to see how the 4-lap averages end up coming out. But the fact that Takuma Sato was able to rip off a 232.7 without a tow, I mean, they're not nearly as far off speed wise as I think many of us thought they would be. Now, again, 4-lap averages, we'll see what will happen. But there was a lot of speculation that they might up the boost levels for May. That may still happen. That may not happen. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But I think that looking at it right now, the Indianapolis 500 looks very similar to the way that it did last year. I don't currently, now no one's going to show their cards right away, but at least currently, what I see at the Indy 500, based on the first 2 days of practice, is that the cars race the same. The same people are going to be running up front for the most part. And yeah, if you liked what you saw last year, get ready. You're going to see more of it. If you didn't like what you saw last year, don't blame the hybrid, because it's the same chassis. It's the same engine. They are doing very, very similar things. So I don't know.
A couple things I want to add to that. Let me ask you this, David, first.
Sure.
Did they handle the boost levels and that practice session correctly? Obviously, hindsight's 2020, and maybe one of the most popular drivers in the field crashed his car, and Sada, who probably had the fastest car, has to write that car off. Should they have just let one driver per team go out with those boost levels, or were you okay with letting everybody on an even playing field go out?
Well, and to Takuma Sato's point, he had the fastest car, and Rahal has actually announced today that they're going to a complete backup chassis. So that car is completely scratched for the Indianapolis 500. So the 75 car, we now have no idea how that's going to perform, if it will perform well or not. Heard a lot of drivers complaining. Scott Dixon complained to me when I asked him at the museum about that session. Scott McLaughlin called out one of the newer teams, which he told us to kind of put it together. I imagine they're red, white, and Italian, but you don't know for sure. But I would, if I were speculating, as Scott asked me to, it's probably some of the teams definitely were not respecting the idea that one car gets to go out and make a run at a time. But to me, I don't know. There's part of me that likes the split day where you have high boost and low boost, and you get to have a read on qualifying and the race. I think if we did this next year, I think you do one low boost day completely and one high boost day. And maybe the first day is the high boost day, where you can have a rookie orientation in the morning and then go high boost, because you don't necessarily have to run high boost the entire day. But to Scott Dixon's point, and I think he made a very compelling point to me when I asked him, is that, I don't think 2 hours was enough time for 34 cars to make mock qualifying runs, which I completely agree with. So I like the idea. I like the fact that we get a little bit of a teaser to what qualifying will look like. Now, personally, I kind of agree with some of the things that Santino Ferrucci was saying, which is, I've always said this for a while. I think you need to pick a boost level and stick with it, whether it's the high boost or the low boost. I think you should race what you qualify. And Santino said we should be racing with the higher boost because it would break up some of the momentum racing that we've seen. And I thought that was a super compelling idea. Will it ever stick? No, because I don't think IndyCar's comfortable with 230 mile per hour race laps, despite the fact that in 1996 we had laps over 236 miles an hour with no safer walls and no Haas devices and no aero screens. But what do I know? And I don't know. I think I like where they're going with this. And again, to your point that you kind of made earlier, if you did this on a weekend, and if you did this on the first weekend in May, and you had the high boost and the ability to kind of promote big speeds right away, I think that would only be good things for the Indianapolis 500 in the month of May.
I have a few
Let me
thoughts.
Yeah,
Uh,
hold on 1 second, Kyle. Hold on. Let me ask David this, and then we'll get right to you. Um, are we going to see somebody take the lead going into one on the last lap, and then get halfway down the backstretch and be an anchor and get passed by 2, 3, 4 cars because everybody else is now on the hybrid, and that leader who just took the lead isn't? Or is it going to be something to where by that point everybody should kind of have figured out when and if to use it?
It depends who you believe. And I don't think we
Yeah.
really have I mean, we're not going to know until lap 199 of the 500.
Yep.
Now, that being said, the thing that we've all heard about the hybrid, and it seems like what the strategy is going to be in qualifying, is to juice it coming off of turn 4 down the main straightaway. As we know, we've known this since Mid Ohio, you get about 4 seconds of boost from that hybrid. It's not a lot. It's not a lot of horsepower. It's something, but it's not a lot. So, if you look at the Indianapolis 500 in the last lap, yes, there's a possibility that someone burns the juice going into one, and because of the way the supercapacitor works and that hybrid regeneration works with the race car, the car actually slows down even if you're not regenning because the system's trying to regain energy, and there's no way to you can't just flip a switch. Once you pull that hybrid, it essentially needs to charge that supercapacitor. So it's a risk that you could take. And remember, the Indianapolis 500, there's no overtime. So do you take that risk and do you drive it off into turn 1 at 238 miles an hour, try to pass 3 or 4 guys going in there, take the lead, and hope you can hang on to turn 3 and hope that, 24th place stuffs it in the wall and you get a win? So I think there's some compelling thoughts about that, and
There'll be a lot of blocking. There'll be a lot of blocking heading into 3.
Well, that's true.
If that's the case.
But again, Tony, I think the big thing is if you are a sitting duck because your hybrid's regenning, sure, you might be able to block one car. But if you block one, there's probably somebody else on the button passing it on the outside. And the other thing, again, Kyle Larson said this, you get a pretty decent initial boost when you pull that hybrid flat, but it's not necessarily enough to just suddenly have like a supersonic turbo boost. You're just going to fly past. Like, it's just not that much of a difference, which I think had this been planned a little bit better, to be brutally honest, had it been integrated into a new chassis where you could cool it a little bit better, produce more power from the hybrid, I think we could really have a compelling argument about how much this is going to affect the race and particularly the end. But it just doesn't deliver enough power right now, in my opinion, where it's really going to make a big difference. But again, we'll see. I mean, again, it is an unknown, and they're not going to shoot us straight on this. We're not going to know, like I said, until they're coming off of turn 4 on the last lap.
Well, I'm glad that we have seats in turn number 3. All right, Boris's dad, it is all you. My fault.
Not his dad, my roommate's cat.
He's
Anyway.
he's a stepdad. He's co-parenting.
I'm
Boris's uncle.
So there's a lot to break down there. And once I'm done, Tony, I want to hear your thoughts. But back to the qualifying boost. I don't think that, making the series, having them go one at a time is a great idea. I like the open, just keep it open. I do agree that 2 hours wasn't enough. And I actually brought this up to David at the end of the day, that I think that we should segment 2 hours, maybe start 2 hours earlier. I think 9 to noon every practice day should be high boost. I think we should do high. After the test, I thought it was crazy that, hey, why have we only had 1 day of high boost before qualifying I think that's crazy. On the hybrids, the thing that I think is crazy is that on the road courses, the hybrids don't tend to make a difference because everybody just kind of uses them in the same spots. Everybody has the same tools, so they all use them on the same corners in the same ways throughout they use them the same amount of time throughout a lap, so they don't usually make a difference. That's why the racing hasn't changed really because of it. And we've seen them on ovals like Milwaukee and Iowa, and obviously Milwaukee was a great race, but it didn't make the racing any better at freaking Iowa. So I think it's kind of crazy that we're talking about, and even the drivers have talked about how it could make it easier to pass from third and fourth, which would be a good thing. But like we've never seen this from the hybrid system. We've never seen it actually make a difference throughout a lap because, like I said, everybody has the same amount of hybrid use in a lap that you can use.
Yeah, and you think back to that first hybrid oval race, Colton Herta was on the front row, did not use the hybrid at all. Yeah, no, I just, and the driver who said that, because he said it to us on the record, so I feel like it's okay to call him out, was Alex Palou. And Palou has been one of the consistently most positive drivers about the hybrid. God knows why, but he is. Probably because he's winning a lot, and that's fair.
Does Super Formula have a hybrid? The cars where
I think
don't they have a hybrid?
I think they. I thought they may. They might have KERS. I don't know if they have a full blown. Yeah,
they do have a push to pass. I know.
Yeah, I don't. I honestly don't remember. Yeah.
To go back to Kyle's point about more time with this, I don't know if this is something that could work, but we saw Fox and FS1 and FS2's coverage almost daily at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and a lot of it's on FS2. And then FS1 will come on, and that schedule's been posted. But posted on there was a rookie and refresher on Tuesday from I think noon until 2, maybe 10 until noon. If I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm wrong. But didn't everybody get their rookie and their refresher completed, or is there somebody that still needs to complete it?
That's the Tony Kanaan
session. Is literally just for Tony Kanaan.
Yep. That's
good press. Well, good press gives us something to talk about and film and shoot, but 2 hours, insane. That should be 10 to noon.
Yeah. That should be 10 to 10:10. Get in, make sure that you can strap the belts on, and you're good to go. So I wanted to mention this. We saw the 2 incidents that we talked about with Takuma Sato and Kyle Larson. So I was at the medical center, and I happened to have a video of, and I posted this to my social media channels. I happened to have a video of Larson going into 1. He's a bit high, and the next thing you know, you hear him parking into the wall. So I end up going over to the medical center, and as I'm showing him this video, and he's like, "Yeah, I hit my marks, but the car didn't turn with how I wanted it to turn." Sato wads it up. I mean, and it sounded like, for lack of a better term, it sounded like a bomb went off. And Larson was like, "Oh shit, was that how mine sounded?" And I was like, "No, yours wasn't all that bad." But yeah, unfortunate that Sato and look, it seems like, and I don't want to get Kyle too excited here, but it seems like Rahal has made steps. Sato was obviously one of the fastest. Graham Rahal was top 2 or was top 10 in I think 2 of the sessions. He responded to my tweet last night.
I wanted to bring that up. That was the energy I like to see. I saw him say me, and I was like, "That's the energy.
That's insane,
baby."
Okay, we need to explain. We need to explain Graham. We got to explain Graham. What the hell, Graham?
So Graham, and this is, nobody in this room or in this chat is probably shocked that Graham responded. But I had tweeted out, who was a realistic dark horse that could win this 500, and Santino Ferrucci was obviously the most popular answer. But then Graham Rahal chimes in and just responds with me, and I was like, "Oh, well, I thought he was going to open himself up to a lot of criticism." Pacers must be down 6 because we just added 14 viewers to the chat. I love it.
They're literally they're down 6.
Yeah. So Graham responds, and I thought, oh, Graham, who is very much pays attention to what people say online.
He loves keyboard warriors. Loves them.
Yes, he loves the keyboard warriors. So, the response is me, and I thought, that kind of might have opened him up to some negative criticism. But like 90% of the people that responded to that were positive, like, "Yeah, Graham, let's do it. Graham, let's go for it." Those type of things. So I thought he opened himself up to some criticism, and there was a couple people in there, Twitter keyboard warriors, as Graham likes to call them, but overwhelmingly positive in the response to him saying me. So, all right, Graham, here you go, buddy. We're going to be positive about you. We like that energy. Let's go do it. Let's put it in the show. Let's qualify in the top 4 rows, and let's see you go after it. We saw how close you were, obviously, in 2020 and 2021. It's been a struggle since. we've heard a lot of things in the off seasons the last couple of years about Graham. Hey, the car's going to be better. We're going to be better. Okay, you said it. It's on record now. You can't delete the tweet because we've got it screenshotted. Let's see you run up front.
Look, man, there's almost nothing I can say here that doesn't come off as biased, but like, could you imagine if Graham pulled it off? Like, there's nobody over the last 2 or 3 years that has paid his, like, last 4 years since finishing third in 2020. Like, there another driver that has paid his dues as much as Graham Rahal? Like, could you imagine? Because I'm not that shocked that the response was positive. Like, are you just gonna keep kicking the man while he's down over the last 3 to 4 years he's had at this race? Like, man, if he
I
pulled it
think
off, it would be incredible.
People love
I think to your
confidence.
point. Well,
They
we
love
know
it.
that. I think most popular as far as paid your due wins, it would be Graham. Some can maybe make an argument for an Ed Carpenter who has, if we're talking about drivers who haven't won the 500 before, I think those two are up there. I think,
Marco.
Marco's right there too. Although, it hasn't been the decade or so Marco in his later part of his career that it was in the first half where he really had chances to win the Indianapolis 500. But yeah,
Hey.
I think Graham would be a very popular opinion. Some things in the chat here real quick. Sorry to steal your thunder. But yeah, this has been brought up a couple times and I forget who said it to me and it was off the record, but it was like, Penske, we think they got more speed and they still got the Michael Cannon set up on there.
Well, half the field has the Michael Cannon setup now. My God, I think it's over half the field. So the problem with Penske having the Michael Cannon setup is it's like the last Infinity Stone. That was like the only thing holding them back. And now that they've got it, I mean, least we forget, didn't they win the 500 in 2023 without the Michael Cannon setup? And then they got it last year and they won again. So
They won again, but they qualified well. That was the difference.
Well, and that makes a big difference. We're talking about Graham and his chances, but Tony brought up a point that I think we really need to harp on. Is you have to qualify well. It is a track position race. You can't just race your way up and pass everybody.
Yeah.
You think back to
Elio won from 17th.
He did.
I think 17th is the furthest back you could win from. I know I asked Santino Ferrucci in the media scrum last week, I said, hey, where can you realistically win from in this 500? And he said, anywhere. I don't necessarily believe that. 17th is kind of an extreme side. That would maybe skew the numbers a bit if you did the average of where the Indianapolis 500 winner finishes. I thought Cannon went to Foyt in 2023. Was I wrong on that?
Well, it was late 23 because that was when they had the partnership with Foyt. So they formed the partnership with Foyt right before Gateway in 2023. I remember that vividly because I was in a hotel room in Michigan. So yeah, that was when that happened, and that was kind of took us all, I think, by surprise. But now, as we've kind of seen that relationship develop, and the fact that now it's kind of a feeders team for Penske, things start to make a little bit more sense. But I don't know. I like the idea. I like the confidence of Graham. Graham has run, I say this as a reformed Graham Rahal fan. There's lots of photos of me out there in McDonald's suits and Graham hats and Service Central stuff. So, Graham is a driver that is very likable. The people like him. And I think, whether I agreed with everything that he said or not, I think his Speed Freaks appearance where he just let it rip, I think that appeals to the people when a driver is just willing to put their damn opinion out there and they don't care what anybody else thinks. So I think that Graham, and to Kyle's point, he's paid his dues. Now, I think number one driver who's paid their dues still is Pato O'Ward. I think he's the driver that I think if you took a push poll of people walking into the speedway, who deserves it this year. And of course, the track chooses the winner. No one deserves the Indy 500. No one deserves to qualify for the Indy 500. But you walk in there, and I think a lot of people would say Pato. And by the way, Tony, I did have a thought. You're going to hate me for bringing this up. But if it's a requirement to have a female on the Indy 500 broadcast, would it not be better to bring Catherine Legg in instead of Danica?
I thought about that. I think I even mentioned it on the show. How do you keep kind of Elf that partnership happy throughout the Indianapolis 500? Could you bring Catherine in there? And you certainly could. I mean, look, Jack Harvey's doing it kind of with no experience. I think Catherine's very well spoken. I mean, you might have to be right in the dump button because she might slip a shit or a piss out there when she's talking. But yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, isn't she running the Xfinity race the day before? I think there's probably some obligations that she has now running a stock car in Charlotte leading up to that weekend. And I mentioned maybe you throw her in there on race day. Maybe you let her wear an Elf shirt. Maybe you let her, kind of do that thing to keep that relationship with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway healthy. Obviously, she's going to run the Elf car in the Xfinity race coming up on the Saturday of Brickyard 400 weekend. I mentioned that, probably episode 3 when we kind of learned that she was not going to be in the field of 34 on the entry list and going for the Indianapolis 500. But Danica, if you think about it, and I know there's a lot of people with Fox and Fox Nation and all that kind of stuff that I don't want to get into. I think it does make sense to have Danica in there, and she's definitely. I mean, Danica's a household name. People may not want to think this and may say, oh, well, she hasn't raced the Indianapolis 500 and however long. I think the average sports fan in general knows who Danica Patrick is. They don't know who Catherine Legg is. They don't know who some other names are. I think Danica Patrick is as much of a household name still to this day that IndyCar has.
All right,
even if people associate her with NASCAR.
I'm gonna say it because I think, and you're gonna hate because I know how you're gonna react to this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. At the height of the Indianapolis 500, the broadcast coverage, you didn't have to rely on names that people knew. I mean, sure, yes, they knew who Bobby Unser was. They sure as hell didn't remember that Sam Posey made one start in 1972. They didn't know who Jack Arute or Gary Gerald or Dr. Jerry Punch were, but they were knowledgeable, credible people who followed the series and were able to broadcast it in a credible, informational, entertaining way. And I just hate this philosophy, I'm just... It's nothing against Danica. It's nothing against Dale Jr. It's nothing against Rutledge Wood or, Jeff Burton or whoever. But I hate this attitude that kind of started with NBC where we have to have stars covering the race rather than people who know how to explain this niche sport to the biggest audience you're going to have the entire year. We sacrifice the knowledge. We sacrifice the ability to get the message out in the most efficient, best way possible just for the cheap thrill of having stars involved. I mean, am I crazy for saying that?
Yeah, but we live in an era now, as we know, that we didn't live back in the day, to where there's different ways to advertising a race. There's different ways of promotion. There's different ways of getting into the devices and the phones of people that either on the fence about IndyCar, about tuning in, or fans that may say, oh, this looks cool. And you can't deny it, between Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, Danica's got like 3 million followers. And we do live in this. I mean, it's almost, you got to look at her as an influencer and come in and say, oh, by the way, this influencer that so many people follow has also been in the cockpit. Now, yes, there's something to be said about, okay, well, do you really want to hear from somebody who hasn't driven too much in this car, or certainly hasn't driven with an aero screen? And obviously James Hinchcliffe, who does a great job, has. So you kind of scratch that need. But we're just, it was a healthier series in 1995 when it was Gary Gerald and your boy Paul Page and everybody doing the race. It's a different era now, and I don't think we sat around and talked about TV ratings too much in 1995. I don't know. We'll have to ask Steve Shunk about that. But, we live in a TV ratings era right now. We have to look at alternative media to promote this race. And I think that Danica checks off a lot of those boxes.
Alternative media. We live in the era of the Manning cast. Why can't we have our cake and eat it too? You can have the normie broadcast, and my God, on FS1, let's have the Indy 500 for the nerds. You know what I mean? Why not? What's stopping you?
So you want who do you want to be on an FS1 alternative broadcast of the Indianapolis 500? And then when the ratings come out, do all those ratings just mash together?
That's above my pay grade. What the answer I can give you is, let's go out. Well, I don't know if you necessarily just want to poach everybody from IndyCar Radio, but I mean, let's go get a Ryan Marine to lead that broadcast. Let's go find some drivers. Let's go grab some personalities. I don't know, David Landon, Tony Donohue, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's been suggested before. I wouldn't be privy to that information. But let's go get some people.
Next race, you and I on a next race would be a hell of a time.
I think it would. You know, we should do a Manning cast at some point. But I really think there would be. I think
Pacers come back and win by 1.
Hey, yeah, baby!
You just saw my reaction. I won't lie.
David is ready for Pacers and Racers race.
Well, I'm not ready. Well, you know what? Here's the deal. Like I'm.
Did it.
Well, good for the I'm happy for the Pacers. Sorry, Milwaukee. Can't wait to spend a lot of money at the Milwaukee Mile this year. I'm gonna buy a lot of flags. I'm gonna buy a lot of bratwurst. And we're gonna spend a lot of money at dive bars around there for sure. So sorry, Milwaukee, but you know, Indianapolis.
Halliburton gets it done.
Halliburton.
Baby.
Yeah. All right. That's good. Okay.
So
good for the Pacers.
Danica.
Back to Danica. Yeah. Oh God.
Which I never thought I would transition to say.
Well, I just think I think there are some ways that, because imagine if you did have a broadcast where it is just like the nerdy one and the one for the racers. I think that would maybe quell a lot of like the complaints from the IndyCar fans. I don't know.
How about Cletus? Supposedly Cletus is in town then or around that time where maybe you throw him in there.
Well, if you're going to go full bore on like the just trying to clout chase on the Fox broadcast, absolutely. And I'm not saying Cletus wouldn't be someone. I think you should involve him for sure. I mean, the fact that he hasn't been involved at this point is almost a war crime.
He should at least be on the red carpet.
Yeah.
At minimum.
Yeah. But you know, there's a list. I mean, please somebody ask me to give you a list of like racing influencers that should be at the racetrack, because I probably have a list of 15 that would have a real impact if they came out. I met some in New York City when I did the Genesis unveil. I mean, I met some guys who were I met an influencer who was at Long Beach who has 2 million followers and hung out with him. And I was like, did you do anything with the IndyCar series? He was like, yeah, I made some videos about it, but they didn't do anything to associate with me. And I was like, what the hell? I'm like, what? So I will say this. I will just somebody reach out. I'll get you the contact and we'll fix that problem, because there's some people who really have some serious impact or can make some serious impact who are interested and have audiences that are outside of the traditional IndyCar audience who I meet. And, you know, I talk to them about IndyCar racing and they go, yeah, that's really cool. And I go, have you ever like worked with IndyCar? And they go, no. And I go, oh, uh-oh.
And these influencers that we bring in, or IndyCar brings in, not we. I mean, hell, we saw that grandma who does funny stuff being Connor Daly's, pit or whatever, and did
Gangsta
some videos.
Grandma. Yeah.
But like, did they promote that the race is Sunday at 3? Did they promote where the race was? Or did they just do some funny skit? Or did you bring some comedian in to do a recap of Barber from last year that we saw today? And it was like, okay, that didn't really like twist my arm to watch or move my needle to make sure I watch on Sunday. If you're going to have these influencers come in, and influencers love to make it all about themselves, which, okay, it's their channel, do your thing. But let's make sure that moving forward, they're promoting for people. Isn't the reason why you're bringing these influencers in is to get new people to watch? Well, make sure these influencers are talking about when the freaking race is. On that subject, I'm not saying we're going to do an alternative broadcast, but are we going to see maybe a Chris Myers or a Mike Joy here at Indianapolis 500?
Oh, I hope not Chris Myers. I would prefer that doesn't.
Why is everybody? Explain to me why everybody craps on Chris Myers.
So Chris Myers, I need to find the clip. Hey, Steve Kilstock, help me out. He went on a show that was like it was like ESPN did it. It was like the top 10 like events that have lost their luster, and the Indy 500 was on there. Quite rightly so. It was around 2005, but Chris Myers went on there and just absolutely took a big fat shit on the Indy 500. And I get it, that was 20 years ago, and that was the height of NASCAR. But like, we didn't forget. We didn't forget that you said that. So I if you're gonna get someone in the hosting role, I would. Who's even on the Fox team right now? Well, Rinaldi's going to be a part of it. I think Tom was at the open test. I didn't see him, but I know he was doing. They had him in a garage, and they were doing interviews with the drivers. So he was there.
Aaron Andrews.
Aaron Andrews. I don't love that pick.
ABC had Lindsay Zarniak for a while. I think she's still.
Well, she's a racer though. Lindsay's been in the race. Like Lindsay knows what she's talking about. And Nicole, I thought Nicole Briscoe was the best that ABC ever got in the hosting position. It's a shame she only did it once. I mean, who are some of their lead NFL guys? Who's the guy who does it with Brady?
I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but I know. I mean that. But yes, there are opportunities there.
Mike Joy, I would like to see. Mike Joy, I think would has the reverence, has the credibility, has the historical knowledge. It would be a bit of whiplash.
Yes, Kevin Burkhardt.
Kevin Burkhardt. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if you want an NFL guy in there. I don't know if you want an Aaron Andrews. The more I think about it, the more I think Mike Joy would be a pretty good choice.
Whatever happened to Vince Welsh? Didn't he used to work for Fox?
He got fired. He called a win wrong or something. He did the Marty Reed thing, and I think he said something about a wheel or something. It was all very odd. I honestly wouldn't be. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jamie Little in that role. To be honest with you, we'll kind of see how they do it. But
seems like that would be a transition for her, and I'm going to let the comments in the chat take care of that. All right, so the test is in the books. Barber coming up this weekend, and then we can finally turn our attention to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the road course race, and then obviously the qualifying for the Indianapolis 500 and the Indy 500. Yeah, I think they should put Gus Johnson on the alternative channel. Just have him yell and scream.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
I would love that. I would love that.
That would be. That would
He's
certainly
got
be
getting
fun.
away from the cap speed. That'd be great. Be great. I love Gus Johnson, but I like high energy. Tony, for as high energy as he is in real life, loves his sports commentary to be just like the Mets. Hello, friends. Here comes Pato Award. He's making the move.
I think Gus Johnson going, he's got daylight in the three. He's got that would be a lot of fun.
You want to talk about a viral moment? It'd be Gus Johnson calling the Indy 500. Actually, you know who I would want to call the Indy 500 would be Ian Eagle. He's brought it up a couple of times before. He's got a great voice. He has reverence for the race. I think Ian Eagle would be my choice. If we're taking someone in for outside, yeah.
That's a crazy left turn there for Ian Eagle. Go ahead, Kyle.
Tristan Cortez said Dave to Spain. That'd be fun. A lot of people saying that they want Jan Beekes back, and I think we all want Jan Beekes back in any capacity in IndyCar racing.
I'm trying to get David. I'm trying to do some segments in May called Dr. David, where he can go through and discuss some parts of the car and things that are into the woods and into the weeds.
Listen, I'm a nerd, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. I'm calling into question David's actual knowledge versus, you're going against Jan Beekes.
No, I couldn't beat Jan Beekes. Hell no.
But David is very good at getting other people to talk about the details of things.
I can ask a question that gets up to the line where someone can go, okay, this guy gets it. Let me fill in the details. And then when they fill in the details, I can go, okay, I can ask a follow-up question. Like I'm not a tech guy necessarily. I appreciate tech. I like having other people explain the tech to me and make me go, oh, that's really cool. Wow, look how far advanced we are. I can't work on the cars. Of course not. But that's why I stand in front of a camera with a purple mic and I'm not wrenching under the car. There are lots of other people who are much more talented than me can do that, and I can just be the dancing fool in front of the camera and try to explain it as best I can.
Tony, I think we should just be David's agent because he's got a lot of tape together. He's done broadcasting before with Kart Chaser. Like, there's a lot of tape there that we should just start sending to broadcasters without David knowing.
Maybe that, or he could find his agent somewhere down in South Beach, and then maybe we can get on an alternative broadcast of an Indy Next race that, trying to get some people to watch it, pay attention to it, and see some of the stars of the IndyCar series for years to come
Stars
in
and
that
cars.
series. But yeah,
Stars and
we'll do
cars in
cars.
Michigan.
Yep, we'll do that. Maybe we can do our own version of Cars and Coffee, and do because the next race is usually in the morning, 9-10 a.m. Do a cool broadcast on FS2 for them. All they got to do is give us a call. I mean, they want to send everybody else all these races, and they want to roll out the red carpet and give everybody all the access they want. But the people that are there for them and
Yeah.
have the audience, they kind of poo at times.
Sky
Oh,
Warren
God.
says DL 500 Club broadcast on FS2. That'd be
Hell
awesome.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Somebody asked about DL 500 David Land shirts. I think we're not too far away from that. Might have some other things coming up in May that we're looking forward to announcing here over the next couple of weeks. As always, like and subscribe to the Unverified YouTube channel.
We hit 1,000
David Lance-
subscribers. We hit 1,000
Yeah.
subscribers. That's pretty
So
huge.
keep it rolling. We appreciate that. I know there are people in the media that would love to have 90% of what we have, or even 10% of what we have. But we're looking forward to Barber this weekend. We'll be back coming up next Tuesday. David, I'll let you guys have the. Oh, we have to say.
Hey, Kyle, you doing
happy-
anything cool this weekend?
Yeah, Kyle. I was gonna say,
yeah.
Kyle, what's your happy weekend looking like coming up this weekend?
Well, I will not be at Barber. There is an IndyCar race happening at Barber, and it is the month of May, but I'll actually be at the Miami Grand Prix this weekend for Formula One. Last November, I got the opportunity to work with expert hosts, which is basically, F1 fan experiences at the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And fortunately, they asked me back for the Miami Grand Prix this weekend. So I fly out tomorrow morning, and I'll be doing Formula One things in the month of May, which in my heart feels sacrilegious, but I'm excited. I think it's going to be a good time. I'll be putting some things on my story and hopefully making some reels. So follow me at Kyle_Cuthbertson on Instagram.
And you'll have a nice tan to come back. You'll be looking ready for May more than what we will be. I'm scrolling through a few of these comments a few more times. Stymie Snurdly, I'd like to know who that really is. They've made some good comments. Sky Warren said it's good seeing you guys at IMS at the Ganassi unveil. We didn't get into that. Let's mention that a little bit. We both talked to Dario Franchitti and Jason Van Sickle from the museum. That was certainly cool. There were some cars in that display that they showed outside of IMS that I know were near and dear to the three of our hearts. Obviously, Marcus Ericsson's win. We'll see the Thomas Scheckter car here in a couple of weeks. But David, I know you talked to Chip. I know you talked to Mike Hall. You and I both talked to Dario and Jason Van Sickle on our social media channels, and you can see those interviews on David Land's channel as well. But what were your takeaways from kind of pushing the museum, continuing to push the museum? And if you haven't been there, you'll absolutely have to check it out. But pushing the museum forward and closer to where we are right now.
Well, and that's what's so great about this acquisition by the museum is that, Tony, you and I, and to a certain extent, Kyle, we're of a certain age, and that certain age has kind of been, there's not many of us, I'll put it that way, right, who remember IndyCar racing as it was in between 1995 and, let's say, 2010. And those of us who are kind of carrying that flame never really got to see those cars that we saw growing up in the museum. And there's really been no more definitive team in that era than Chip Ganassi Racing. So the fact that Chip was willing to sell his cars, he sold ultimately 14 to the museum. Now, they're not all Chip Ganassi cars. What's actually kind of cool is there's a few oddballs in there. Chip had which I'm still trying to get to the bottom of what the story is with it, but there's a Greg Moore rookie car that is joining the collection from Chip Ganassi. There's some of those cars that we all kind of fell in love with. I mean, the 1998 Alex Zanardi Reynard, I know, is one that's particularly near and dear to my heart. Zanardi was such a big part of IndyCar racing, and much like Greg Moore, didn't get an opportunity to race at the Indianapolis 500, but now, he and Greg get to be immortalized in that collection. I think that's just absolutely awesome. What a healing moment for the sport. There's some real interesting stuff like the Delta Wing, the Brickyard 400 winner with Jamie McMurray, the first Ganassi win, the first Reynard win with Michael Andretti. That's going in the collection. The 2000 Michigan 500 winner, Juan Montoya's car. So you'll be able to have a true compare and contrast between the IRL car, which won the Indianapolis 500 that year, and the Lola that won the Michigan 500. You can put those cars next to each other and get that compare and contrast. So, yes, it's amazing for me as a kid who, born in 1993 and grew up through that era, as flawed as it was, to have it represented in the museum now is absolutely awesome. And I'm looking forward to seeing those cars and kind of evoking those memories again.
We'll give a little free pub here, which we usually don't do, but they've been really good to us since this opening. They are doing a speaker series next Monday night with Ari Lyondike, which I think will be really cool. So if you want to check that out, you can check out the IMS Museum's website for tickets. I think the three of us have talked about possibly going to that. I don't know if Kyle will be back from Miami or not, but certainly looking forward to a weekend of racing down at Barber. Kyle's going to have himself a blast in Miami, and then come next Tuesday when we return on Unverified, we will be ready for the month of May. We'll be ready for the road course race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then leading up to the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500. We thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels at Racing Nation TV for Kyle, Tony D Indy on X, DLand91 as well. Like and subscribe right here on YouTube to Unverified, and we're ready to ride with everybody listening, all of our listeners, in the month of May as we gear up for the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500. Thanks for joining us, all of us here on Unverified.